Hey y'all, welcome and/or welcome back to my channel. My name is Janae, if you didn't know, and today's video is another true crime episode. So if you're ready, let's go. Alright y'all, so I want y'all to do me a favor right fast. I want y'all to put in the comment section what's the first thing you think of when you hear of the city Milwaukee as it relates to true crime. Write it down in the comments and tell me what's the first thing you think of. Because I can almost guarantee you that the first thing you think of is Jeffrey Dahmer. Especially right now because of the new little Netflix like docu-series, docu-movie. I don't really know what it is, but I bet that is Jeffrey Dahmer. And if it's not Jeffrey Dahmer, it's probably because you from Milwaukee, right? And so in light of this whole Dahmer movie that's come out on Netflix, I chose to do the case that I'm doing right now, which I was really trying to wait on because I wanted to make sure I had all the details right. But once the Dahmer thing came out, I just like put foot to pavement and did my little research and got it all together because I'm tired of Dahmer. I am sick of Jeffrey Dahmer, okay? Growing up as a native to Milwaukee, I have heard so many stories about Jeffrey freaking Dahmer. And I can almost guarantee that 9 times out of 10, y'all don't even know that there was another serial killer that was working for the better part of 21 years in Milwaukee. He literally got captured in like 2009. And he started his crimes back in 1986. Or at least his murders, because the boy's criminal history is like, oh, he got a long little rap sheet. But we're going to get into that later. But like I said, I can almost guarantee you that y'all do not know that there was another serial killer who was out here terrorizing Milwaukee. And I feel like instead of talking about little Jeffy Jeff, let's just go ahead and get it right into the person that I'm talking about, which is Walter E. Ellis, okay? Walter E. Ellis was born on June 24th, 1960 in Holmes County, Mississippi to his parents Leroy and Maddie Ellis. He was one of 5 kids, and at some point in the mid-60s, I want to say when he was like 5 or 6 years old, they left Holmes County and they moved to Wisconsin. I'm not really sure what the dynamic of their household was and why his parents decided to move their family from Mississippi to Milwaukee, but that's what they did. So little Walter is about 5 or 6 years old when they make the transition from the South to the Midwest, and he don't adjust well. I don't know if little buddy had anger issues or what, but it said that Walter would kind of just pop off on his classmates at the littlest thing, and he would just assault them, talk bad to them, and he kind of gained the reputation of a bully. And not only did he gain this reputation at school, but he gained this reputation at home as well, like with the kids in his neighborhood, which I don't know if the kids in his neighborhood was the same kids at his school, because when I was growing up, I didn't go to my neighborhood school. Everybody else did, but I went to a school that was like farther out. So I don't know if the kids in his neighborhood was the same kids at his school, but either way, he was attacking the kids, beating up the little kids, and just being mean for no reason. And so because of this at school, he was disciplined a lot. I don't know if that means like in-school suspension, ISS, or if that was like out-of-school suspension, or if that meant that his parents was reprimanding him. I really don't know. It just said that he was disciplined because of the bullying that he was doing. And whatever that discipline was, it really wasn't working because the bullying was continuous. He didn't stop. Either way, Walter, he missed a lot of days of school. And he also just didn't do well in school. And I don't know if that's because he just wasn't a smart kid, like he just wasn't academically intelligent, or he didn't do well in school because he wasn't going to school as much as he should have gone, or if it was a combination of both. But no matter the case, Walter decided that school just wasn't for him altogether. It's not his thing. So after he completed 8th grade in 1974 at the age of 14, he decided that he was just gonna bypass high school. He wasn't even gonna worry about it. This is when he began his lengthy criminal career, I want to say. And when I say lengthy, y'all, it was so much that I almost didn't even want to tell y'all everything that he did because it was so much. However, I'm gonna go ahead and tell y'all because I feel like it's important to the case and the crimes that he goes on to commit, because we just gonna go ahead and get into it, okay? So Walter's 14 years old, and since he's not going to high school, he gotta find something to do during the day, whether that's a hustle, that's a job, like whatever it is, he gotta find something to do. And lo and behold, he does find something to do, but it's robbery and attempted murder. So he attempts to rob this person, and unfortunately that robbery goes wrong, and he ends up assaulting this person to the point where he is charged with robbery and attempted murder of this person. And because Robert, that boy name is not Robert, and because Walter is only 14 years old at this point, he kind of get let off with a slap on the wrist, and he's only sentenced to pay a fine. And this will be his life for the next 4 years at least, because from 1974 to 1978, Walter will be arrested on a number of charges, but he will always get let off with a slap on the wrist because he was a minor. And once he turned 18, the life of crime really, it didn't stop. Walter was still robbing and assaulting people. And so in 1978, he was arrested for a robbery, and this time he was sentenced to 4 years of probation. So he was on papers at this point, which I'm not really sure why they decided not to actually lock him up for robbery. But I guess since this was his first offense as an adult, they decided, 4 years of probation, he got stipulations, he can't do this, that, and the third. It'll be straight. But y'all, it wasn't straight. It wasn't straight at all. Because I keep wanting to call this man Robert. Because Walter, he didn't care about that probation. He didn't care about that probation at all. Because the very next year, in 1979, he got arrested for drug possession, which would be a violation of his probation. Now, at this time, he's 19 years old, and you would think that you would get convicted and you would at least serve some months in jail. But that wasn't the case for Walter, because he ended up only getting a fine. And that was because Walter was able to prove that there was some shady dealings that was going on with a pharmacy in Milwaukee. Basically, Walter was able to obtain these drugs from the pharmacy without a prescription. And he was able to prove that he was able to obtain these particular drugs from said pharmacy without a prescription. So he was able to prove that there was shady dealings going on with this pharmacy. And that's why he was only charged with a fine. So he only had to pay the city of Milwaukee some money, which I don't think he ever paid any of these fines because the man didn't have no money. But that's neither here nor there. But just a year later, in 1980, Walter decided that, you know what, this drug and robbery game, it's not for him. It wasn't for him at all. He kept getting caught. He kept getting these fines. He barely skated off by the skin of his teeth with that little drug possession because the pharmacy was doing some like shady business. But he decided, you know what? This life, this drug and robbery life, it's not for me. So he decided that he would try pimping instead. Right. Because drugs and robbery, that ain't him. But pimping, he got pimping on lock. Okay? So in 1980, he tried his little hand at pimping, but he didn't know how to let go of his past because he went back to his old bullying methods. He was not getting along with his fellow colleagues, the people that was working the street with him, aka the hustlers and the prostitutes. They wasn't getting along. Mr. Walter was not getting along with them. He was trying to bully them, and in turn, he was arrested for extortion, aka robbery. He tried to rob the hustlers and the prostitutes. And let me just say, if you gotta rob a prostitute, you probably shouldn't be in the pimping business because, and correct me if I'm wrong, don't prostitutes just hand the pimps over their money? Like, I don't know. I don't know, Walter. I don't think the pimping business is for you. And you would think that since he already got a lengthy rap sheet as far as robbery goes, that he would have gotten, some type of jail time. But no. Walter was able to get these charges dropped because there was a lack of evidence. And Walter was free to go. Literally 3 days after the charges were filed against him, they were dismissed. And because Walter wasn't getting pretty much no type of reprimanding for his actions, he just kept on going. And in 1981, he was arrested twice for possession of a controlled substance with intent to sell. So the first time that he was arrested, he pretty much got off with a slap on the wrist again, and he was sentenced to 2 years probation. The second time that he was caught, he was actually convicted and he spent 3 years and 2 months in jail. And the only reason he spent that 3 years and 2 months in jail was because he had violated his probation by having the drugs again, based off, the 2-year probation that he had got the first time he had got caught for possession, right? And mind y'all, this is the first time since 1974 that this man has spent in jail at all for any of his crimes. He has robbed people. He has assaulted people. He has beaten people to the point of where it is almost attempted murder. And the reason that he spent any time in jail is because of a violation of his probation. 7 years after his first crime, he's finally spending some time in prison. But if y'all think that changes him and reforms him, I'm sorry to tell y'all, it does not. Because when he was released in 1985, he tried his little hand at honest work. He tried to, do under the table jobs and do stuff that will make him somewhat of an honest living. But it didn't last too long because just 7 months after his release in September of 1985, he was arrested again for solicitation and robbery of a prostitute. And again, this was a violation of his probation. So he was probably going to do some time for this. Unfortunately, though, because the person who was reporting the crime of robbery was a prostitute, the police just dismissed the case, which that don't sit right with me. But in any event, that is what happened. Because the lady who came forth was a prostitute, they decided that her statement wasn't credible and that Walter was just going to be let go again. So after he was let go from that charge, Walter wouldn't be in trouble again until 1986 when somebody called the police on him for disturbing the peace. Now, when the police were called on him, he decided that it was a good idea to fight the police and resist arrest. And in doing that, he actually ended up harming one of the police officers. And y'all know they wasn't going to let that slide. So he was actually sentenced to 7 years at the Milwaukee County House of Corrections. He did his little 7 months there. And he was released in May of 1987. And y'all, the man did a whole entire turnaround trip. Instead of going to the Culver's to get him a Butterburger, he went down to the Walgreens and tried to steal something and got arrested the same month in May of 1987. And so they sent his happy tail right back to prison. The same month that he was released, he went right on back for theft, okay? Like I said, I'm trying to get me a Butterburger, but I guess the man didn't have no money, so he had to rob somebody to get some money. Because them Butterburgers, ooh, they worth a little rob for, especially one of them Butterburgers with a lemon ice cooler on the side. Anyways, like I said, this man did a whole turnaround trip. He got out of prison in May 1987, and he went back to prison in May 1987 for theft. And because of this, he spent 9 months. Well, I think he was sentenced to a year, but he actually ended up only spending 9 months this time. So a couple months after his release for the theft, he was caught literally in the act of trying to steal a car in 1988. The police pulled up on him like, bro, what is you doing? This ain't your car, clearly. This ain't you, bro. And instead of just, taking one on his chin and like, damn, yeah, y'all got me. I'm literally trying to steal the car right now as y'all see me. Walter wasn't trying to go. And again, he assaulted a police officer and was arrested yet again. And for this crime, he was sentenced to another 2 years for obviously assaulting the officer and for violating his parole once again. He did his full 2 years for this, and he was released on January 9th of 1990. And once he got out, he didn't decide to turn his life around. Of course not. That's just not what Walter does. He decided that it would be in his best interest to join a drug trafficking ring in Milwaukee. And so that's what he did. He's out here, dealing drugs. He's not like the head honcho. He's not Larry Lucas in this bitch. Walter is not a good criminal. He's not a good criminal. But obviously he don't know that. The life of crime, it just ain't for you. It wasn't for him, but he didn't know that. So anyways, like I said, he was in this little drug ring. He was one of, the little people. And he get caught for possession again. And this is only 5 months after he was released. So this is in June of 1990 when he get caught. And he arrested for, drug dealing. And he's supposed to serve 30 months. Unfortunately, he's let out after a year and 3 months, which is only 18 months of his 30-month sentence. So he's let out after 18 months, and get this, y'all, on good behavior. I don't know about y'all, but I just feel like if you have a lengthy rap sheet and every time you get out of jail, you're going right back for something, anything, good behavior shouldn't even be an option for you. Good behavior release should not be an option for you. And what else did we expect? In November of 1990, this man is rearrested for violating his probation. I don't know what he did this time. I don't know why he was arrested, but he was arrested on a violation of his probation in November of 1990. And instead of sending him to prison, they was like, you know what? This man been in and out of jail. We gonna send him to a halfway house. Like, bro, a halfway house. It's a halfway house. That means you halfway in and you halfway out. He don't need to be out at all. Like, he shouldn't be halfway out of nothing. He should be all the way in. But in any event, I am not the Milwaukee County Commissioner. No, they collect money. I'm not the Milwaukee County. Let's just say that. I'm not the Milwaukee County. So, anyways, he was sent to a halfway house so that he could get, I guess, rehab for his mental state and all of that bull crap. And in this halfway house, people were allowed to leave. But they were allowed to leave for certain circumstances. They was allowed to leave if they wanted to go to church. They were allowed to leave if they were in school and if they had a job. However, this particular halfway house would allow you to leave if you bribed them. If the counselors were given enough money, people were able to leave. And it was really just a crooked ass halfway house, and he knew that. Walter knew that, and so one day he just decided he gonna leave. He not even gonna come back because what y'all gonna do? I mean, really, what are you gonna do? And what the halfway house was gonna do was report him. Report him. That's exactly what they did. The halfway house that he was staying in reported him for leaving and never returning, and he was arrested once again. And this is in 1992. So he was arrested for leaving a halfway house in 1992. But he pretty much was like, look, that halfway house was crooked anyway. The people be bribing them and they be letting them just go off and do what they want to do. So I just left. And Walter, he was never charged or he was never held for leaving this halfway house. But what did happen, though, was that because he had snitched on the halfway house, the police was like, you know what? They had got a little tick in their brain and was like, we can use you. And so that's exactly what they did. They was like, instead of us sending you away or sending you back to the halfway house, we gonna use you as an informant. So in 1992, Walter Ellis became an informant for the Milwaukee Police Department. He was snitching on everybody. But not only was he snitching on everybody, he also felt like this gave him like a free pass. And it kind of did, because between the years of 1992 and 1997, Walter was just out here wilding, okay? Like wilding. And he was just getting slaps on the wrist for it. Like, for example, in 1994, one of his girlfriends had called the police on him because he had assaulted her with a screwdriver. Now, what that mean? I don't know. But he assaulted her with a screwdriver, and y'all, the charges against him was dropped because he was an informant. The police didn't want him in. They wanted him out to keep giving information. And then in 1997, he was arrested for robbery and resisting arrest. But y'all, he was only sentenced to 5.5 years of probation. And if this man's history has told us anything, it has told us that he don't respect his probation, like literally at all. He don't care about the terms of his probation. All he gonna do is violate the motherfuckers and do what he want to do. At some point in 1997, the police was like, you know what, sir? You know what, Mr. Walter Ellis? You doing a little bit too much. We got to cut ties with you. And the Milwaukee Police Department, they fired him as an informant. Like, how do you get fired as a snitch? I'm sorry, y'all, but like, how you get fired as a snitch, bro? I'm sorry, y'all. This man really got fired from being a snitch. Okay. Whew. Okay, y'all. I'm sorry. But anyways, after he got fired, the police decided to cut off all communication with him. Like, they wasn't really fooling with him no more. And anything that he did from here on out, it was just whatever consequence you get is whatever consequence you gonna get. And in 1998, he was arrested again for reckless endangerment. I don't know the details of that crime, like why he was convicted for reckless endangerment, but nonetheless, he was convicted and he did serve 3 years in prison. And unlike his previous like convictions where he got time for good behavior or whatever, he didn't get that grace because the police the police was done with his ass. So from 98 to 2001, he spent his time in jail and he was released in 2001. Now, it was the same time in 01 when he was released that Wisconsin was passing a law that pretty much all convicted criminals had to submit a DNA sample, was like required for the state of Wisconsin. So if you was a convicted criminal, you had to provide a DNA sample, right? But Ellis was actually released prior to that law taking effect. So he left the prison and he never ended up providing his DNA sample. And I don't know if it was because of this law or what, but Walter decided that it was time for him to lay low. He had been a criminal since 1974. It's 2001. He done with it. He just gonna lay low and, you know, pick up odd jobs here and there, pick up labor jobs, you know, stuff that he learned in the prison. And he gonna lay low. And that's, like I said, that's exactly what he did. And he laid low for like a little minute. Now, even though Walter was laying low and working honest jobs and stuff, his criminal career, well, not his criminal career, his time in jail was not officially over, because in 2009, the Milwaukee Police Department decided that they was going to start reopening cold cases. And during this investigation of reopening all these cold cases of murder victims, Milwaukee Police Department found that at least 9 victims were all connected to one suspect due to the new DNA technology that was upon them. Unfortunately, they weren't able to tell who that perpetrator was, because even though they had put into law in 2001 that all convicted criminals were to provide a DNA sample, against those DNA samples, none of these victims matched. But the Milwaukee police discovered something that It was kind of disturbing to them, and that was the fact that some of the criminals some known criminals did not have DNA on file. So even though that law had passed in 2001, some of the criminals somehow had managed to escape giving their DNA. And Walter Ellis was one of those people. Because like I told you earlier, he was released in 2001, but it was prior to convicts having to give their DNA. So he was already out on the streets trying to live a better life when this law was passed. And so because of this, in 2009, once the police discovered that he was one of the people who didn't give their DNA, they got in contact with him somehow, and they were able to ask him to come down to the police station and provide his DNA. And he agreed to come down to the police station. However, on the date that was selected, he he just didn't show up. And because of this, police were able to secure a search warrant for his home. And once they entered his home, they collected DNA from a toothbrush of his. Once his DNA was circulated into the database, it came up as a match to the 9 victims that they had been running cold cases on. Yeah, so they finally had the person who was responsible for at least 9 killings in Milwaukee over a 21-year span from 1986 to 2007. And that is when a warrant was issued for his arrest. And when they went back to his house, Buddy was gone. He was nowhere in sight. However, the police, they wait for tips and stuff. And an anonymous tip actually did end up coming in. And the police were able to find his 1994 Buick Century at a motel. It was the Park Motel in Franklin, Wisconsin. And they were able to bust him and raid his room and take him into custody. And he wasn't the only person in the room. It was another lady who said that she was actually held against her will, and there was crack pipes and all kind of other bull crap. But in any event, they were able to capture Walter E. Ellis, and after his capture, they were able to charge him with at least 7 of the 9 victims who his DNA matched to. And so I'm just going to go into the victims now based off of the date that each one was found, okay? So going back to October 10th, 1986, when a young lady, a 31-year-old mother by the name of Deborah Harris, was found in the Menominee River in Milwaukee. And just a day later, on October 11th of 1986, a 19-year-old daughter named Tanya Miller was found in an abandoned house on 28th and Lloyd. Now, following this, another finding wouldn't be had until 1992, and that was on November 8th of 1992 when 25-year-old Irene Smith was discovered on the north side of Milwaukee as well. Now, it would seem that the killer had taken a break during this period because another body wouldn't be found until 1995. And that was on April 24th near 6th and Locust when a young lady by the name of Florence McCormick would be found. The next victim who would be found would be Sheila Ferrier, who was a 37-year-old mother of 5 who was found on June 27th of 1995 in an abandoned house on 14th and Chambers. The next victim who would be found was a 41-year-old mother named Joyce Mims, who would be found on June 20th of 1997, also on the north side of Milwaukee. The final victim was a 28-year-old daughter named Aretha Stokes, who was found on April 27th of 2007 in an abandoned house on 7th and Burleigh. She would be found a whole decade later than Joyce. And the reason that Aretha was even attached to this crime was because the DNA that was found on her was the same DNA that was found on Joyce. And now there are 2 other victims that I need to talk about because I said 9 and that he was only convicted for 7. So the first victim, her name is Jessica Payne. And Jessica Payne was a 16-year-old runaway who was found on August 30th of 1995 outside of an abandoned home. And originally a man named Shante Ott was charged and convicted of her murder, and he would actually spend a whole 13 years in prison on a crime that he didn't commit, because they convicted him of the murder of Jessica, but DNA would prove that he was not the culprit in this crime. And as of right now, I think that he was issued a $6.5 million payout from the state of Wisconsin due to this false imprisonment. And another victim that was linked to Ellis was a young lady by the name of Karen Kilpatrick. She was 32 years old at the time of her death, and she was found on October 13th of 1994. And in her case, her boyfriend slash, baby's father was the one who was convicted of her murder, but he was acquitted by a jury. But she was actually linked by DNA to Ellis, but he was not convicted of her murder. So, like I said, he was convicted of 7 of the 9 victims who were linked to him. And at some point, he was supposed to reach a plea deal. And on the day that he was supposed to reach this plea deal, he completely shocked everybody. I mean, the family members who was there, the prosecutor. I don't know if he shocked his defense attorney or not, or if they knew that this was about to happen. But he shocked everybody by pleading no contest. But that just kind of, for the families, they thought it was about to be over. And unfortunately, since he did plead no contest, it wasn't over. But in the end of it all, he was convicted of all 7 crimes. He was convicted of all 7 homicides. And he was sentenced to 7 consecutive life sentences to be served back to back to back to back to back, baby. But what pisses me off about his sentence is that although he was sentenced to 7 consecutive life sentences, this man had the nerve to die after 3 years of incarceration. He died 3 years into his 7 consecutive life sentences due to health issues. Like, how dare you? How dare you die? Don't die. But another thing that gets me, though, is the fact that he was literally operating or, committing his murders throughout the time that Jeffrey Dahmer was committing his murders. These were coinciding serial killers. I think Jeff was caught in 1991 or 1994. I don't know the exact year, but Ellis was still committing crimes throughout this whole time. Not even just crimes, but murders. And the families believe that he got away with it for so long was because the majority of his victims were known prostitutes. Each and every last one of these people, at the end of the day, was people. Period. But yeah, y'all, that is all I have for this video for you today. Thank you so very much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you like this type of content. And I will see y'all in the next one. Bye.